Welcome back to Something in the Wilderness. I'm your host, Steve, and this is a show about the music of Andrew McMahon. I'm so glad you've joined me, whether it's your first time or you've been here before. Occasionally I have a guest on the show, but today I'm going solo again. About 12 and a half years ago, Jack's Mannequin released their second album. I think fans had pretty high expectations for this one, and understandably so. Everything in Transit was what a lot of fans refer to as the perfect album. Anything Jack's Mannequin did after that point would be an uphill battle to even compare, right? For me, that was the issue with The Glass Passenger. It wasn't the fault of the band, or the songwriting, or the producer. It was my problem, I'm willing to admit it. I was going to compare it to Everything in Transit no matter what. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. But The Glass Passenger had a different vibe altogether, in my opinion. And I think that was pretty intentional. The song structures were much more diverse than what we heard on the previous album, and the sound was a bit more raw and loose. The song I want to tell you about today wasn't a single, and it doesn't seem to be one of those standout tracks from that era that we hear about regularly from fans. It was definitely one of the more heavier songs on the album. On a recent episode, I talked to Noah, who's more of a recent fan, and I wasn't surprised when we were comparing our favorite and least favorite songs off The Glass Passenger, and we fell on opposite ends of the spectrum for this one. So let's dig into this love song. Or breakup song. After all, big hearts are for breaking. I don't really remember the first time I heard this song. It may have been live, but it may have been the studio recording. But I do remember when I first heard this album all the way through, this was one of two standout tracks for me. It probably had to do with the sing-songy chorus, but I also think it reminded me of the grittier side of something corporate, and I really liked that and kind of missed it at the time. The song I'm talking about today is American Love by Jack's Mannequin. It was track 4 on The Glass Passenger, which was released on September 30th, 2008. Even though this song came out over a decade ago, for some reason it's been featured on two more recent Spotify compilations, one from 2018 and one from 2021. These comps seem like really random cuts of various artists from maybe that era. Songs by bands like Rocket to the Moon, Bare Naked Ladies, Cobra Starship, Matchbox 20, and Nickelback. So a little bit of genre mixing there, in my opinion. But I assume these songs and albums are owned by some record label that's able to release these songs in any format they wish, so I think that's what's going on here. Some production notes on the song. Like the rest of The Glass Passenger, American Love was written by Andrew McMahon and produced by Andrew and Jim Wirt. But I do always wonder about when Andrew gets the songwriting credit officially, if each band member helped write their own parts. I've listened to enough other podcasts and watched enough music documentaries to know that songwriting rights are a bit of a touchy subject, and there's usually a legal aspect to it as well, because really it comes down to who gets paid royalties for that song. But in my opinion, in this song, American Love, the guitar is what really brings it to life. So it just makes me wonder. As far as I know, Andrew doesn't play the guitar, but I could be wrong, and please correct me if I am. I'm really curious. According to Wikipedia, Andrew's goal with the Glass Passenger album was to make it a more natural-sounding or organic album than what was coming out around that time, which a lot of it relied on heavy digitization. So I guess when I say that American Love has a really raw sound, maybe in Andrew's world that's natural sounding or organic. I'll come back around to that point. So on this particular song, we have Andrew on vocals, piano and keyboards, Jay McMillan on the drums, Bobby Raw on the guitar and the background vocals, and Jonathan Sullivan on the bass, who I actually sometimes forget was actually part of the band longer than Mikey the Kid, who would only join a few years later. Additional musicians on this track include Patrick Warren on keyboards, Grooveline Horns for the horns arrangement, Fernando Castillo on trumpet, Raul Vallejo on trombone, Carlos Sosa on saxophone, and Jim Wirt with that bass solo, plus CJ Erickson was on programming and tambourine, and finally PJ Smith on additional background vocals. Alright, did you have any idea there were that many instruments on the song? Because I had no idea before I read the CD liner notes. I also had no idea there was a trumpet, a trombone, nor a saxophone in the song. And oddly, it's the only song on the entire album which contained these three instruments. According to Setlist FM, American Love's been played 22 times in concert, which really sounds like a low estimate to me. Now, before a YouTube search recently, I would have believed 22. But if you look for the song out on YouTube, you're going to find countless video recordings right around 2008. Now, I guess it's possible that at every show they played it at in 2008, someone with their flip phone started taking video, because maybe it was a new song and people were excited, right? But there is surprisingly a really high quality video with good quality audio as well of the entire song from the Houston, Texas Warped Tour show. I'll link that one in the show notes. By the way, thank you to whomever snuck the mini DV cam into that show in Houston. We salute you. Setlist FM lists that Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness has played this song twice, and I would say that both are pretty special occasions. One was the 2017 Dear Jack Foundation concert, and the other one was the 2019 Rock Boat trip. Now, my wife and I do have a room booked on the upcoming 2021 Rock Boat, so maybe they'll resurrect this song again in the fall. I think they're due. Though I may have seen this song perform live before, as I mentioned earlier. I was at one of those Warped Tour shows in 2008, the one in Columbia, Maryland, and they did play some new songs. Specifically, I do remember a piano ballad that I had never heard before that would become one of the most popular Jack's Mannequin songs of all time within a year, which I'll cover in more depth in a future episode. But they may have played American Love during that set as well, and I wouldn't have known the song yet. Unfortunately, there's no set list out online for that particular show, just shows around that time, and it seems like they were playing American Love a lot. So I went ahead and created a set list for that Columbia, Maryland date in 2008, but I only put the 2 songs that I am positive that they played on that date. So of course American Love hasn't been played on any of the 2020 live streams or drive-in shows. So in my opinion, again, it's due for a return. I'd also love to hear this one get the just Andrew and a piano treatment. I think he'd have to rework it. I think it would be very different, but I'd love to hear what he came up with in regard to that. More evidence that it's mostly a guitar song. I did find an acoustic version of this song from the Warped Tour in Dallas, Texas, and I'll link that video in the show notes as well. It looked like an exclusive event because they were playing it in a small tent. Bobby's playing the acoustic guitar, and Andrew's sitting behind a keyboard, but he doesn't play it at any point in the song. So I assume they played other songs as well. But this song was performed with guitar and vocals only. Here's some songwriting notes in this track. You may remember from a previous episode when I mentioned that Andrew went through a bit of a writer's block before he was able to write all the songs that made up The Glass Passenger. So when he was ready to write again, it was really important to him to not just write what he called a cancer album, a bunch of songs all about his cancer experience. Now, we all know that there are several well-known and well-loved songs from this era that are about his cancer diagnosis and treatment, and that's wonderful, but I don't think this song is one of them. In a video interview with Absolute Punk, which I'll link in the show notes, Andrew stated that this is a song he doesn't even talk about as much as most of them. And he said the way he wrote this song is pretty different than the way he writes most of his music. He wrote the key melody first, and then he recorded that into his computer. Then he started going through his lyric notebook and highlighting lines that he had written over the previous few months that he thought could work. He referred to this as a songwriting exercise, I guess. He then came up with the minor key arrangement and the hook, Big Hearts Are for Breakin', and he constructed the rest of the song around that. Well, in my opinion, that was a good choice because that's a great hook. Simple line, but a great hook. Since he was coming off of writer's block at the time, it does make total sense that he was trying something different, and I'm really glad that American Love came from this experimentation that he was doing. Which brings us to the sound of the song. As I mentioned earlier, the guitar is the central instrument in the song. Usually it's the piano in Andrew's songs, or it's a good combination between guitar and piano, but this really feels like a rock song with a piano to back it up. In my opinion, Bobby's guitar work makes the song what it is, and we have the Warped Tour video as evidence of this. Overall, though, Glass Passenger is a pretty diverse album. I don't consider this one of Andrew's albums that's really consistent sounding all the way through, like Everything in Transit or the self-titled Wilderness album. I also think this one has a much darker tone to it than Everything in Transit did. I used the word raw earlier, and what I also mean is that songs like this one lean a little bit more to the hard rock side. I know it's a bit of a stretch to call a band like Jack's Mannequin hard rock at all, but I think if they ever got there, it was on songs like this, and a couple others that I'll talk about in future episodes from this exact album. First off, the guitar's the most obvious when we think of hard rock. The choruses do feel turned up a notch from the verses, but even the guitar in the verses have that sharper edge. The bass line running through the entire song's more defined than usual, and it kind of carries the song in those quieter guitar moments as well. Even the drums feel like they hit a bit harder in this song than in others. The piano in this song, to me, is the backing instrument to all the rest. Sure, it helps keep the melody consistent, but this is more of a rock song than a piano rock song. Lastly, the vocals. There are a few times in all of Andrew McMahon's songs that it feels like he gives his voice complete freedom to do what it needs to. I think that's the most noticeable characteristic in songs like this one from The Glass Passenger. He doesn't normally sing this way. It's less controlled, and that's why I call it raw. The line, It's Not Right to Tell a Lie, and then he yell sings Lie. That's the best example I could find in this one. But I'm sure I'll touch back to this topic in future episodes when I discuss other songs from the album. But oddly, these vocalizations are a feature of both my favorite songs on this album and my least favorite songs on this album. As a final note for the instruments, if you could hit me up on Instagram or Twitter and let me know, I'd be real curious to know where the horns are on this song. No disrespect to the horn players or the arrangement, but I do find it hard to pick up, even after multiple listens in a row. I'm also not a musician, and honestly, I'm not good with identifying different instruments within a song. My best guess is it's during the bridge when he sings, "It's a new heart attack, brand new bricks on my back, don't say a word, they might find us there." But you might have a better idea, and if you do, please let me know. So regarding the lyrics, the first thing I want to mention is that I think it's kind of funny that he mentions the solar system in the song. Mostly because I kind of forgot that that's mentioned in this song. And I've seen several fans over the years reference the fact that Andrew writes lyrics about space and the sky and the stars and water and the earth and whatever other natural elements make up our universe. He starts the song with this line, "You see, I got this American love, a brand new planet in my solar system." So, a new love is like a planet that's never been discovered before. It's been there all along, but now it's been found. I really like that metaphor. In the second verse, he uses it in a different way, a brand new black hole in the solar system. So, things in the relationship are getting darker. Toward the end of the song, the line changes again. "You see, I got this American love, a hidden planet in my solar system." So, the song eventually evolves from a love song into a breakup song. The love is lost. Now he can't find that planet at all anymore. It works. So I guess the whole space, stars, and solar system metaphors are Andrew's go-tos. But I can't say I ever dislike them. The other lines I want to point out in the first verse is the "I kiss her neck, but I just can't look her in the eye." I love the way he sings it, but it also reminds me a lot of a line from one of my all-time favorite Something Corporate songs. And maybe that's why this song kind of reminds me of Something Corporate in a roundabout way. Ironically, that other song was not written by Andrew, and I wonder if you can name that song. As an aside, the line changes to "Keep your eyes shut, I just can't stand to say goodbye" by the end of the song, which again makes sense because the song starts off as a relationship song and ends in a breakup. The chorus itself is that one line repeating, so there's really not much to say about it, but I will once again say, what an awesome hook. The second verse starts with a line, "You see, I got this critical conscience," and I really like that line. It's always stuck out to me. So I looked up the official definition of conscience online, which included an example of it in a sentence as well, and I actually found it really relevant to the song's lyrics. The definition of conscience is an inner feeling or voice viewed as acting as a guide to the rightness or wrongness of one's behavior. And the example sentence they provided was, "He had a guilty conscience about his desires." This sounds like the thesis of the song to me. Two of the lines that come later in the verse point to what's happening in his head as a result of his critical conscience. "I dig my grave, but I just can't stand to step inside," and "You thought I knew, it's just not right to tell a lie." His critical conscience is going to eat him up alive and eventually end this relationship, and he knows that. Big hearts are for breaking. A passionate love could also end in a passionate way. I have two favorite parts of the song, and for me, they're not typical things I pick up on when I listen to a song. During the chorus, there's these super cool new wavy keyboard notes that lie just under the guitar when he sings "Big Hearts Are for Breaking." I really think the song would suffer without that little scale or arpeggio in it. It makes me pay more attention and fall a little deeper into the song. That's the only way I can think to describe my feeling on it. But I love that part, and it's probably honestly one of my favorite parts of the entire album. The second part that I really love in this song is the use of the backing vocals, or maybe you'd call them callback vocals. "When They Find Out" is in the second verse, and "Big Hearts Are for Breaking" during the chorus. I don't think this song would really be the same without those vocals. And I do need to give an honorable mention to the drum fill around the 2:45 mark. I love that part. Thanks, Jay. So some final thoughts here. I think the title of the song is ironic, because maybe it'll lead you to believe that this will be a great American love story or something, when in fact, it's more about what could happen in a perfect world versus what happens when you can't allow yourself to fully open up into a relationship with somebody else. So going back to how I felt about this song 12 years ago when I first heard it, I still believe American Love is one of the strongest songs on The Glass Passenger. I'll admit, this isn't my favorite Andrew album or even my favorite Jack's Mannequin album. There were several songs in this album that fell short for me, but in my opinion, American Love hit just the right notes. If you're a fan who loves American Love, hit me up. I'd like to hear that. Although I have no concrete evidence to stand with this theory, I do have a reason to believe that this song may have been meant to be an early single by someone at some point. The fact that they were playing it a lot in the summer before the album came out is the main reason I think so. But I also think this song just kind of has all the qualities of a single to me. And by the end of that summer, suddenly they had released a different lead single, and American Love feels like it was just never spoken of or referred to again. Rarely ever played in concert again, at least. Just my 2 cents here as always. Thanks again for listening. If you want to help bring more listeners, rate the show on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you can. Watch for updates on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to message me directly, email somethinginthe@gmail.com. Keep your eyes shut. I just can't stand to say goodbye.